I'm going to explain how to use the tonality and color controls in SpeedGrade. And notice that I said controls, not color wheels. That's because we're going to work with color wheels and another set of controls called sliders. SpeedGrade has a full set of tonality and color controls that exceed those that you can find inside Premiere Pro. To see how this works, we're going to work with Premiere Pro and SpeedGrade. So start off by opening up Premiere Pro by going to Working Files, go to Premiere Pro Projects, and open up SG Controls. We're going to work with these two clips here, this linear gradient and this 4-color gradient. But we're going to start off by opening up SpeedGrade. So minimize this and open up SpeedGrade directly. And I want you to open up the SG Controls Premiere Pro project, which is here in my recent project list, but it might not be in yours. So click on Open Project, go to Premiere Pro Projects, and go on down to SG Controls and open that up. Click on Open here. I want you to have the waveform scope available here. So right click on this and click on Waveform if you don't see that. And this waveform scope is a straight line. That's because we have this gradient that goes from black to white, left to right. That's why you get that straight line there. I have the tonality and color controls wide open here. I did that by clicking this little disclosure triangle there. That would open up this panel with the snapshots and the masks. You can close it by clicking on that or pressing the W key. That opens or closes it, like so. We're going to work with these color wheels, but we're also going to work with sliders, and we access the sliders by clicking on this button right there. Everything's kind of grayed out like it's not accessible, but it lights up when you hover over it like that. All right, we'll go back to the color wheels by clicking on that. I want to start off by working with tonality, the brightness, and the tonality controls are on the outer edge of these color wheels, those little gray and white curves there. Every color wheel has one, and there are 12 color wheels here inside SpeedGrade. There are 3 for the overall look, 3 for shadows, 3 for midtones, and 3 for highlights. 12 color wheels. It may seem like overkill, but it gives you lots of control. Let's go back to overall here. This first color wheel is called Offset. Let me pull it down a bit so you can see it. Offset is the same as the pedestal inside the RGB color corrector inside Premiere Pro. And the way pedestal and offset work is that they lift up or drop overall luminance entirely for the clip as one big unit. I'm going to take this little triangle here and drag it left or right. Not up or down and not around the curve, just drag it right or left. So I'm going to drag it right first, and it lifts everything up equally. Drag it left, it drops everything equally. Now the slope of that little line changes, not because something strange is going on, that's just where the scale works. In fact, we're lifting everything equally here, making it all brighter, making it all darker like that. If I make a change like this and I want to get back to the beginning, I click this little triangle there to reset it like that. That puts it back to neutral. If I go away, then I turn off the light there. If I go back here and turn it some direction, it stays on to tell you that you've made a change. I'll click this and reset it. The normal workflow is to just offset first to take care of the blacks, and then you fix the highlights. You do that with gain. Gain works similarly, but it just locks down the blacks end and works from this end up as if this were a fulcrum and this thing was a big lever. So I'll take this and drag it to the left. That pulls it down, and notice that the blacks don't move at all. Lift it up, and we lift up the end like that. So it works as a straight line like this. It does not affect the blacks, or it only affects them gradually as they move up that line like that. And then if you want to adjust the gamma, which would normally be the midtones, you'd use this, but it's not truly midtones here. It affects only this end of the midtones. Notice how the curve bends pretty much toward the middle of the shadows down here. So it's not truly midtones. It's the midtones of the shadows. Let me reset those two guys. So why have the shadows, midtones, and highlights sections? Well, this gives you a lot more control. I'll click on shadows. I'll move this up a bit. You'll notice one more thing showed up here, this little line there. That's a pivot point for where you decide the shadows begin and end. I'll show you that in a second. If we go to offset, which normally lifts everything equally, it doesn't work like that here. It works kind of like the way gain works. There's going to be a fulcrum right here, and we're going to lift up this lever like this. So go like this, and there is that fulcrum in the middle. We're just cutting it right off. So we adjust the shadows only in that area there from basically 50% on down. If I go to the gain, it's going to work on this end here, but not any higher than that point. So it bulges it up right there. And if I work on the gamma, it works on the lower end there, lower to middle, like so. Kind of like the gamma and overall. But notice that does not affect anything above that point. I'll reset these guys so things look more obvious here. I'll take this and move it up like that, make it really obvious. I can move this point so I can define exactly where the shadows lie, rather than taking the default here. And I do that using this little pivot over here. Drag this up or down. You barely see a change there. Hold on the Shift key, that makes it go faster. So I can adjust that boundary, that border between the shadows and everything else, basically. And it works similarly for highlights. I'll reset this. I'll reset this. I go to highlights, you see that the little controller's in the left-hand side because it's going between the midtones and the highlights. It says MH. So you define the boundary between midtones and highlights. I'll go over here and show you that. I'll just pull this thing like so, and notice that it basically bends it in the middle again. We can lift this thing up or down, define where that break's going to be. I'll reset that. Reset this. And then the midtones have two controllers because you define the width of the midtones. If I move you like so, I can then take the width and change it. So I'll drag this down. I'll drag this up. Now you define the midtones as that little range right there. So it's nice to have this extra control. Can you do this inside Premiere Pro? Well, sort of. Let's go back to Premiere Pro. I'm going to take a look at that linear gradient. Open it up and look at the RGB curves on it. And there's the master controller. If I move this, that's like using the gain inside SpeedGrade. And if I move it down here like this, that's kind of like using the gamma, but it affects the rest of the clip too. So I need to pull it down a little bit just to affect that end of the gamma. But if I want to do the same as offset, I need to lift this up and this up. That's how offset works. Or pull them both down. So we can do what's being done inside SpeedGrade using the RGB curves, but we have less precision because putting the point in the middle becomes a little tricky. I'll show you that. If we want to affect only, let's say, the shadow starting from there on down, we need to put in several points. Just the shadows that way down there. It's a little trickier here inside Premiere Pro. All right, I'm going to reset RGB curves. Let's take a look at the gradient here. I want to look at the color controls here and how they affect Luma. I'm going to open up the fast color corrector first here. If I start moving the colors around, notice that Luma barely changes there inside the waveform scope. You're seeing a change in contrast a bit as we add more color. But other than that, we're not really affecting the Luma all that much here. That's how the color wheel works here inside Premiere Pro, which is distinctly different than the color wheel inside SpeedGrade. I'm going to reset this and turn that off. Let's take a look at RGB curves on the other hand. If you move, let's say, just the red here, it affects the Luma a lot. So RGB curves not only changes color, but also Luma. You can see that a lot better if you change over to the RGB parade here. So go to this little panel menu, go to RGB parade. Let's change red here, lift it up. Notice that red goes up, but green and blue don't change. When you work with RGB curves, you're affecting only the color channel you're working with. You can obviously work with all three color channels, but in this case, we're working with only red, and that affects only the red here. It does not change green or blue. If I go back to the fast color corrector here, turn that on. When I work with a color here, it affects everything. I drag toward red, it drops green and blue. Drag toward blue, drops red and green, like that. So the fast color corrector or the color wheels in the 3-way color corrector affect all the colors at once. That's very much how the SpeedGrade color wheels work as well, but SpeedGrade also affects Luma. To see how that works, let's go back to SpeedGrade. I'm going to go take a look at this clip over here. If I take a color control here and drag it toward red, for example, it goes very slowly. Hold down the Shift key, it goes much faster. And notice how we're changing Luma pretty dramatically here as we move around there. So this control is not like the color wheel inside Premiere Pro. It affects Luma and Chroma at the same time. To see that better, let's go to the RGB parade, which is called Parade here. Right-click here, and go to Parade. We have that same kind of a view again, where we pull toward red, and blue and green will move down. Again, the scale kind of moves with us here. That's just the way it works here inside SpeedGrade. As we move around here, we're affecting all the colors at once. Now, a lot of people find this very intuitive, but if you want to change just one color channel, you can't do that with a color wheel. But all is not lost here. I'm going to reset this guy by clicking this little triangle there. I'm going to go over to the sliders by clicking on this. Let me pull the sliders up a bit so you can see them all. There's a little lock there at the bottom which links them all together. Turn that off. Now if I want to work with just the red channel, I can slide this right or left. Hold down the Shift key to make it go faster. There I'm working with red. It looks like green and blue are changing, but they're not. That's just the scale of the scope adjusting there. So you can work with individual color channels here inside SpeedGrade as well. You don't have to work only with the color wheels, which affect all the colors at once. So SpeedGrade offers a full suite of tonality and color correction tools. Taken together, they offer more control than all of the effects do inside Premiere Pro. The only little caveat is that when you make any changes to any of the colors here, you're also changing Luma. And so when you're done working with color, you always need to go back and take a look at your Luma, take a look at the waveform scope to see if you need to adjust the Luma as you wrap up your project.